It was supposed to be the surprise of a lifetime. I thought I was planning the perfect anniversary celebration for the man I'd loved for 10 years. Instead, I discovered I'd been married to a stranger who had been systematically scamming vulnerable women out of thousands of dollars while I slept peacefully beside him every night. Hold on just a moment. Drop a comment letting us know what part of the world you're watching from. And if this tale has captured your attention, hit that subscribe button now, because what I have lined up for tomorrow's episode will absolutely blow your mind. What his dating app matches told me didn't just destroy my marriage. It revealed a criminal operation that had been running right under my nose. And I was about to become the key witness in bringing it all down. My name is Colette Rollins, and 3 weeks ago, I thought I had the perfect marriage. Nicholas and I lived in a beautiful colonial house in Westfield, Connecticut, complete with the white picket fence and the golden retriever named Murphy. I was a marketing coordinator at a local nonprofit, and Nicholas worked as a freelance graphic designer, which explained why he was always on his computer and why his income fluctuated. Or so I thought. We'd met at a coffee shop in downtown Hartford exactly 10 years and 3 months ago. I was cramming for my final college exams, stressed out of my mind, when this gorgeous guy with kind brown eyes offered to buy me another latte because I looked like I needed it. Nicholas had this easy charm, this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. Within 6 months, we were inseparable. Within 2 years, we were married. Our life together felt like something out of a romantic comedy. Sunday morning farmers market runs where Nicholas would charm the vendors into giving us extra strawberries. Date nights at the little Italian place on Elm Street where Tony, the owner, knew our order by heart. Long walks with Murphy through the state park, talking about everything and nothing. Nicholas was the kind of husband who remembered that I liked my coffee with exactly 2 sugars and a splash of vanilla creamer. He'd leave little notes in my lunch bag, silly drawings of Murphy with speech bubbles saying, "Mom, have a great day." He surprised me with weekend getaways to cozy bed and breakfasts in Vermont, where we'd spend hours talking about our dreams and our future. He was also incredibly supportive of my work. When I'd come home frustrated about funding cuts at the nonprofit, he'd listen for hours, offering thoughtful advice and reminding me how much good I was doing in the world. When I got promoted last year, he was more excited than I was, insisting we celebrate with champagne and dancing in our living room. Our house was filled with little traditions and inside jokes. The way we'd fight over who got to pick the Netflix show, but always ended up watching cooking competitions together. How Nicholas would dramatically narrate Murphy's thoughts in different accents, making me laugh until my sides hurt. The Sunday morning ritual where I'd make pancakes while he read me interesting articles from his design magazines. We'd even started talking seriously about starting a family. Nicholas had this tender way of talking about future children, how he wanted to teach them to ride bikes and help them with science projects. We'd converted the small room upstairs into his home office, but we'd joke about how it would make a perfect nursery someday. Looking back now, there were probably signs I missed. The way Nicholas was always protective of his laptop, closing it quickly when I walked by. How he'd take phone calls in the other room, claiming they were boring client stuff. The fact that his work schedule seemed oddly flexible. Sometimes he'd be swamped with projects, working late into the night. Other times he'd have days free with no explanation. But I trusted him completely. When you love someone the way I loved Nicholas, you don't question every little thing. You give them the benefit of the doubt. You believe in the life you've built together. 3 weeks ago, as I sat at my desk at work, scrolling through Pinterest for anniversary party ideas, I was the happiest I'd ever been. I'd been secretly planning a surprise party for our 10th anniversary. Nothing huge, just our closest friends and family in our backyard with string lights and Nicholas's favorite barbecue from that place he loved in West Hartford. I'd already ordered custom photo books from our favorite memories, commissioned a local artist to create a painting of the coffee shop where we met, and even convinced my mother-in-law to fly in from Phoenix without telling Nicholas. I'd spent weeks coordinating with his best friend Jake to make sure Nicholas would be available that Saturday evening. The party was supposed to be in 5 days. I had the decorations ordered, the caterer booked, and a speech prepared that would probably make everyone cry happy tears. I was so proud of myself for pulling off what I thought would be the surprise of Nicholas's life. I had no idea that he was about to give me a surprise that would destroy everything I thought I knew about the man I'd pledged to love forever. Because while I was planning our anniversary celebration, Nicholas was busy creating new identities on dating apps, crafting sob stories, and manipulating vulnerable women into sending him money. And I was about to find out exactly how good he'd gotten at it. The first crack in my perfect world happened on a Tuesday morning, exactly 1 week before our anniversary. I was rushing around the house, trying to get ready for work, while simultaneously confirming last-minute party details on my phone. The caterer needed a final head count, the florist wanted to discuss backup plans in case of rain, and I still needed to pick up the custom photo books from the print shop downtown. Nicholas was at the kitchen table with his laptop, supposedly working on a logo design for a new client. He'd been getting a lot of new projects lately, which I thought was wonderful. Business seemed to be booming. But as I hurried past him to grab my travel mug, something on his screen caught my eye. It wasn't a design program. It looked like a messaging interface with what appeared to be a photo of a woman with blonde hair. "Morning, babe," I said, leaning down to kiss his cheek. "What's that you're working on?" Nicholas's hand moved faster than I'd ever seen it, slamming the laptop shut with a sharp snap. "Oh, just some client feedback," he said, his voice a little too casual. You know how picky they can be about their vision. I paused, coffee mug halfway to my lips. In 10 years, Nicholas had never been secretive about his work. Usually, he'd show me everything, asking my opinion on color schemes, testing taglines, getting excited about creative breakthroughs. He'd even created a few marketing materials for my nonprofit, always eager to collaborate. "Must be a really demanding client," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "Yeah, He stopped himself, running a hand through his dark hair. "They're very particular about the messaging, lots of back and forth." She? That was an odd slip. Most of his clients were small businesses or startups, usually run by middle-aged men who needed basic branding. When had he started working with female clients? And why did it matter enough for him to correct himself? "Well, don't let them push you around," I said, grabbing my keys from the bowl by the door. "You're too talented to deal with unreasonable people." "Love you too," he called after me, but something in his voice sounded strained. Driving to work, I found myself replaying the moment over and over. The speed with which he'd closed the laptop, the way he'd said she and then quickly corrected to they, the fact that I'd never seen that messaging interface before. It definitely wasn't email or Slack or any of the usual client communication tools he used. But by the time I reached the office, I'd convinced myself I was being paranoid. Nicholas worked with all kinds of people. Maybe this particular client preferred a different communication platform. Maybe she was going through a difficult rebrand and needed extra hand-holding. These things happen in creative work. Still, the image lingered in my mind. The blonde woman in what had looked like a profile photo, the messaging interface that seemed more personal than professional. Over the next few days, I started noticing other small things that would have been meaningless on their own, but together began to form a pattern that made my stomach twist with unease. Nicholas's phone, which used to sit casually on counters and tables, now seemed permanently attached to his hand. When it buzzed with notifications, he'd glance at the screen with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not excitement exactly, but something focused and secretive. His work schedule became even more erratic. He'd have client calls at odd hours, early morning, late evening, even on weekends. When I'd ask about them, he'd give vague answers about different time zones and urgent deadlines. One evening, as I was organizing party supplies in the living room, I heard him on the phone in his office upstairs. His voice was different, softer, more intimate than his usual professional tone. I could only catch fragments. "I understand how difficult this must be, and wish I could be there for you." When he came downstairs 20 minutes later, I asked who he'd been talking to. "Just a client going through a rough patch," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. Her company's having some financial troubles. Sometimes they need more than just design work, you know? They need someone to listen. Creating and bringing this narrative to life required countless hours of dedicated work. So if you're finding value in what we're sharing, please consider joining our community by subscribing. Your support truly makes all the difference. Now, let's continue with our story. Her. There was that pronoun again. "That's sweet of you to be so supportive," I said, studying his face. "What kind of business is it?" Nicholas paused for just a beat too long. "Marketing consultant. It's a small operation. Single mom trying to make it work." The way he described this mysterious client with such personal detail made something cold settle in my chest. In all our years together, Nicholas had never talked about clients' personal lives. He was professional, efficient, friendly, but boundaried. This felt different. But I pushed the feeling down. Nicholas was a good man. He was compassionate. If a client was going through hard times, of course he'd be supportive. That's who he was. At least, that's who I thought he was. Because I was about to discover that the man I'd been married to for 10 years was someone I'd never really known at all. The moment that changed everything happened on Friday afternoon, exactly 2 days before our anniversary party. I was at home, frantically trying to finish all the last-minute preparations. The weather forecast was calling for possible rain, so I needed to order a backup tent. The custom photo books had a printing error and needed to be rushed through a second time. Our friend Crystal Carrington had called to say she might be running late because of a work emergency. Everything that could go wrong seemed to be going wrong. Nicholas had left that morning for what he said was an important client meeting in New Haven. He'd be gone most of the day, which actually worked out perfectly because I needed the house to myself to wrap his anniversary gift and hide all the party supplies that kept arriving. I was sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by order confirmations and vendor contact lists, when I realized I needed to send the updated guest list to the caterer. But my laptop was upstairs charging, and Nicholas's was right there on the counter where he'd left it. He'd never minded me using his computer before. We'd always been completely open with each other's devices, checking email, looking up recipes, streaming movies. No passwords, no secrets, no boundaries. I opened the laptop and was immediately greeted by his desktop. Nothing unusual there. Design files, client folders, the usual scattered icons. I clicked on Chrome to access my email, but instead of opening to a blank page, it loaded to his last session. What I saw made my blood run cold. There were 4 tabs open, 4 different dating websites. Match.com, Bumble, Plenty of Fish, and something called Elite Singles. Each tab showed an active profile with Nicholas's photos. Some I recognized from our own social media, others I'd never seen before. My hands started trembling as I clicked on the first tab. The profile name was David_marketing pro, and the photos were definitely my husband, but the information was completely fabricated. Age, 35. Nicholas was 33. Profession, senior marketing executive at a Fortune 500 company. Location, Hartford CT. Relationship status, recently divorced, looking for something real. Recently divorced? I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely control the mouse as I clicked through to his messages. There were dozens of them. Conversations with women with names like Crystal, Samantha, Jennifer, Maria. But these weren't casual dating conversations. They were sob stories. In one conversation with a woman named Samantha Ford, Nicholas, or rather David, had written, "I'm going through such a difficult time right now. The divorce left me financially devastated, and I'm trying to get back on my feet. My ex-wife took almost everything, including access to my daughter. I've been living in my car some nights because I can't afford rent and the legal fees. I feel so embarrassed asking, but would there be any way you could help me with maybe $200? I promise I'll pay it back as soon as I get the job." I scrolled down with growing horror. Samantha had agreed to help. She'd sent him money through Venmo, $200 to help with his job interview. But that was just the beginning. I clicked on another conversation, this one with a woman named Carrie Jones. The story was different but equally manipulative. This time, David was a struggling single father whose daughter needed emergency medical treatment. He'd spun an elaborate tale about insurance complications and mounting medical bills. Carrie had sent him $350. Another conversation, another woman, another story. A sick mother who needed help with rent, a car accident that left him unable to work, a failed business venture that had drained his savings. Each story was perfectly crafted to tug at heartstrings and open wallets. I found conversations going back months, maybe even longer. The earliest I could find were from almost 2 years ago, but the pattern had intensified dramatically in recent months, with dozens of active conversations happening simultaneously. Women from Connecticut, Massachusetts, New York, even some from other states, amounts ranging from $50 to over $1,000. And the dates? Some of these conversations had happened while I was lying next to him in bed, probably while he was on his phone claiming to check work emails. My vision started to blur. I felt dizzy, nauseous, like the room was spinning around me. This wasn't just cheating, this was systematic fraud. Nicholas wasn't just betraying me, he was destroying the lives of vulnerable women who thought they were helping someone they cared about. I grabbed my phone with trembling fingers and started taking screenshots, photo after photo of conversations, profiles, money requests, sob stories. Evidence of what had to be dozens of victims and thousands of dollars in theft. As I scrolled through message after message, one thing became crystal clear. The man I'd been married to for 10 years, the man I'd trusted completely, the man I was planning to surprise with an anniversary party in 2 days was a criminal, and I had the proof. I sat there for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, staring at the screen in complete shock. My mind was reeling, trying to process what I was seeing. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be my Nicholas, my husband, the man who made me pancakes on Sunday mornings and left sweet notes in my lunch bag. But the evidence was right there in front of me, undeniable and devastating. I forced myself to keep digging, clicking through more conversations, more profiles, more lies. What I found was even worse than I could have imagined. Nicholas wasn't just running 1 or 2 fake profiles. He had at least 6 different personas across multiple dating platforms. David, the marketing executive who was recently divorced. Michael, the single father whose daughter needed medical treatment. Marcus, the veteran who was struggling with PTSD and financial hardship. Dominic, the entrepreneur whose business had failed, leaving him desperate and alone. Each persona had a carefully crafted backstory, complete with photos, personal details, and tragic circumstances designed to make women want to help. And the conversations, there were hundreds of them, women from all over New England, all being manipulated with the same playbook of emotional manipulation and financial desperation. I found a conversation from just 3 days ago where Michael had convinced a woman named Sarah Martinez to send him $800 for his daughter's emergency surgery. Sarah had cleaned out her savings account because she believed she was helping save a child's life. The level of detail Nicholas had provided about the fake medical emergency was sickening. He'd researched pediatric conditions, hospital procedures, even insurance complications to make his story believable. Another conversation showed Marcus the veteran telling a woman named Linda Thompson that he was about to be evicted from his apartment and needed $600 for rent. He'd sent her photos that he'd clearly found online of homeless veterans, claiming they were pictures of his current situation. Linda had borrowed money from her own family to help him, believing she was supporting a struggling veteran. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely hold on to the laptop. Each conversation I read made me feel sicker, more horrified, more betrayed. These weren't just strangers to Nicholas. He'd developed relationships with these women over weeks and months. He knew their names, their jobs, their fears, their hopes. He'd used that knowledge to manipulate them into giving him money they often couldn't afford to lose. I found a spreadsheet hidden in his files, a fucking spreadsheet tracking his victims. Names, amounts received, dates, notes about their vulnerability factors. Comments like, recently divorced, emotional, next to one woman's name. Single mother, financial stress, next to another. Elderly, trusting, has savings, next to a third. He'd been treating this like a business, like these women were nothing more than revenue streams to be exploited. The amounts in the spreadsheet added up to what looked like tens of thousands of dollars, possibly much more. Money that should have been going toward children's medical bills, rent payments, car repairs, emergency funds. Money that these women had sent believing they were helping someone they cared about in crisis. And where had all this money been going? I thought about our comfortable lifestyle, our nice house, the expensive restaurants Nicholas would surprise me with, the weekend getaways he'd planned because business was going so well. Had my entire life been built on the stolen hopes and savings of vulnerable women? I felt like I was going to vomit. The man I'd been married to for 10 years, the man I'd trusted with my heart, my body, my future, was a predator. A criminal who'd been systematically destroying lives while I slept peacefully beside him every night. But the worst part wasn't even the money. It was the emotional manipulation. Reading these conversations, I could see how skillfully Nicholas had crafted each interaction to make these women feel special, needed, important. He'd told them he loved them. He'd made them believe they were in real relationships with men who cared about them. One conversation with a woman named Rebecca Davis showed months of daily messages. David had told her about his struggles, his hopes, his dreams. He'd asked about her day, remembered details about her job, her family, her hobbies. He'd made her feel like she'd found her soulmate. And then, slowly, carefully, he'd introduced financial emergencies that she'd felt compelled to help with because she loved him. Rebecca had sent over $3,000 over the course of 4 months, depleting her retirement savings because she believed she was building a future with someone who loved her back. I scrolled through her messages and could feel her growing attachment, her excitement about meeting in person, her plans for their future together. Nicholas had strung her along for months, always having an excuse for why they couldn't meet yet, but promising that soon they'd be together. The last message from Rebecca was from 2 weeks ago. David, I haven't heard from you in a few days. I'm getting worried. Did something happen? I love you. Please just let me know you're okay. Nicholas had never responded. He'd simply moved on to fresh victims, leaving Rebecca wondering what had happened to the man she thought she loved. That's when it hit me with crushing finality. I was married to a monster. I closed the laptop and sat in complete silence for I don't know how long. The house felt different now, foreign, like I was sitting in a stranger's home. Every piece of furniture, every photograph, every little detail that had once represented our shared life together now felt contaminated by the truth. The anniversary party decorations I'd been so excited about were still scattered across the dining room table. Streamers that said 10 years of love in gold lettering, photo collages of our happiest moments, the custom cake topper I'd ordered with our initials intertwined. All of it felt like props in some sick joke. I walked upstairs to our bedroom. My bedroom, I corrected myself, and sat on the edge of the bed where I'd slept next to a criminal for years without knowing it. How many nights had Nicholas lain here messaging his victims while I slept peacefully beside him? How many mornings had he kissed me goodbye before spending the day destroying someone's life? The full weight of it hit me like a physical blow. I wasn't just dealing with infidelity. I wasn't just the betrayed wife who'd discovered her husband was cheating. I was an unwitting accomplice to dozens of felonies. Every dinner we'd shared, every vacation we'd taken, every gift he'd bought me, all of it potentially paid for with stolen money from women who trusted him. But as I sat there processing the enormity of what I'd discovered, something unexpected began to happen. The shock and devastation slowly started giving way to something else, clarity. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, everything made sense. Nicholas's erratic schedule, his secretiveness with his phone, the sudden increase in income, the way he'd been so distracted lately. All those little red flags I'd dismissed or rationalized, they hadn't been in my imagination. My instincts had been trying to warn me, but I'd been too trusting, too in love, too committed to our life together to listen. I thought about Rebecca Davis, the woman who'd sent Nicholas $3,000 from her retirement savings, believing she was building a future with someone who loved her. I thought about Sarah Martinez, who'd emptied her bank account for a child who didn't exist. I thought about Linda Thompson, who'd borrowed money from her family to help a veteran who was really my husband sitting comfortably in his home office. These women deserved to know the truth. They deserved justice. And more than that, they deserved to get their money back and their faith in humanity restored, even if I couldn't give them back their trust. I stood up and walked to the closet, looking at all of Nicholas's clothes hanging there, like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. The man who wore these clothes was a stranger to me now. More than a stranger. He was someone I actively despised. I started pulling his clothes off hangers, not frantically or emotionally, but methodically, purposefully. Each shirt, each pair of pants, each tie he'd worn while lying to me and to countless other women. I wasn't angry yet. That would come later. Right now, I was operating from a place of cold, clear determination. As I packed his belongings, I found myself thinking about the woman I'd been just 2 hours ago. She'd been planning a surprise party for a man she adored. She'd been worried about catering head counts and weather forecasts. She'd been living in a fantasy world where her biggest concern was whether the photo books would arrive on time. That woman was gone. She died the moment I opened that laptop and discovered who I'd really been married to. What was left behind was someone harder, smarter, more aware. Someone who wouldn't be taken advantage of again. I looked at my reflection in the bedroom mirror as I folded Nicholas's sweaters into boxes. The woman staring back at me looked different somehow. Her eyes were sharper, more focused. Her jaw was set with determination rather than softened by trust and love. I wasn't the victim here. The victims were the women Nicholas had manipulated and stolen from. I was something else entirely. I was the person with the evidence, the access, and now the motivation to make sure he paid for what he'd done. The anniversary party was supposed to be tomorrow, but I had other plans now. I spent the next 3 hours methodically documenting everything, not just taking random screenshots like I had initially, but creating a comprehensive file that would hold up in court. I organized the evidence by victim, by dollar amount, by date. I created folders on my own laptop with names like Rebecca Davis, $3,247 theft, and Sarah Martinez, medical fraud. For each victim, I compiled their conversations with Nicholas, the payment confirmations I could find in his email, and any other evidence that showed the scope of his manipulation. The medical fraud alone, involving the fake daughter's surgery, would be enough to send him to prison for years. But I wasn't done yet. I opened my phone and started making calls. The first was to my friend Crystal Carrington, who worked as a paralegal at a law firm in Hartford. Crystal, it's Colette. I need a huge favor, and I need you to not ask questions until I can explain everything properly. Of course, what's wrong? You sound terrible. I need the name of the best criminal attorney in Connecticut, someone who specializes in fraud cases, and I need it tonight. There was a pause. Colette, what's going on? Nicholas has been running romance scams for months, maybe years. I found everything on his laptop. I have evidence of dozens of victims and tens of thousands of dollars in theft. Crystal was quiet for a long moment. Holy shit, are you safe? Where is he now? He's supposed to be at a client meeting in New Haven, but I'm starting to wonder if that's even true. Crystal, I need more than just a lawyer. I think I need the FBI. Okay, let me make some calls. Don't do anything else until you hear from me. And Colette, get out of that house tonight. Go to a hotel or come stay with me. You don't know what he's capable of if he realizes you know. After Crystal hung up, I made my second call. This one was harder. Mom, it's me. I need to cancel the anniversary party. What? Honey, what's wrong? Everything's been planned for weeks. Nicholas and I are getting divorced. I found out he's been doing some things that I can't forgive. I'll explain everything later, but I need you to help me call all the guests and vendors. Tell them there's been a family emergency. I could hear the shock in my mother's voice, but she didn't press for details. Of course, sweetheart, whatever you need. Are you okay? Do you want me to drive up there? I'll be fine. I just need tonight to figure everything out. My third call was to Jake White, Nicholas's best friend, who I'd asked to keep Nicholas busy tomorrow so the party would be a surprise. Jake, it's Colette. Change of plans. I need you to keep Nicholas away from the house for as long as possible tomorrow. All day if you can manage it. Is everything okay with the party planning? There's no party anymore. Jake, I found some things out about Nicholas that, look, I can't explain right now, but I need time to get some things sorted before he comes home. Can you just trust me on this? Jake agreed, though I could hear the confusion in his voice. My phone rang as I was organizing the printed evidence into neat stacks on the dining room table. Crystal's name appeared on the screen. I talked to my boss. He gave me 2 numbers, Detective David Goldberg with the Connecticut State Police Financial Crimes Unit and Special Agent Samantha Reed with the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. He says if what you're describing is accurate, this could be a federal case. I wrote down both numbers with hands that were surprisingly steady. The shock had completely worn off now, replaced by something I'd never felt before: cold, focused determination. Crystal, there's one more thing. I think I need to contact his victims, the women he's been scamming. They deserve to know the truth, and their testimony could be crucial. Absolutely not. You let the authorities handle that. Your job is to get safe and hand over the evidence. Promise me. I promised, but as I hung up the phone, I was already thinking about Rebecca Davis and her heartbroken messages, wondering why David had disappeared. Some promises, I realized, were meant to be broken. I spent the night at Crystal's apartment, but I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Rebecca Davis's messages, or Sarah Martinez emptying her savings account, or that spreadsheet with Nicholas's cold calculations about his victim's vulnerability factors. At 7 a.m., my phone started ringing. Nicholas. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message. Hey babe, the client meeting ran really late last night, so I stayed at a hotel. Hope the party prep is going well. I'll be home around noon to help with any last-minute stuff. Love you. Even his lies sounded so natural, so believable. How many times had he used that same casual tone to manipulate his victims? At 8 a.m., I called Detective Goldberg. By 9:30, I was sitting in a conference room at the Connecticut State Police Barracks with him and FBI Special Agent Samantha Reed. I'd brought printouts of everything, hundreds of pages of evidence organized in labeled folders. Detective Goldberg was a stocky man in his 50s with kind eyes that turned hard as he reviewed the evidence. Agent Reed was younger, sharp, with the kind of intensity that made me feel like she'd seen this type of case too many times before. Mrs. Rollins, Agent Reed said after spending 20 minutes reviewing the documents, what you've uncovered here represents one of the most comprehensive romance scam operations we've seen in this region. Based on your evidence, we're looking at wire fraud, mail fraud, identity theft, and potentially money laundering charges. How long has this been going on? Detective Goldberg asked. From what I can tell, the earliest conversations go back almost 2 years, but the activity intensified dramatically over the past 6 months. He was running multiple active scams simultaneously. Agent Reed made notes on a legal pad. We'll need to forensically examine all of his devices, computers, phones, tablets. We'll also need to trace the financial transactions and contact the victims. About the victims, I said, my stomach tightening. I know I'm not supposed to contact them, but these women deserve to know the truth. Some of them are still hoping to hear from him. Rebecca Davis sent her last message 2 weeks ago, asking if David was okay. We'll handle victim notification. It's crucial that we control how this information is disclosed to preserve the integrity of the investigation. Detective Goldberg leaned forward. Mrs. Rollins, I need to ask, did you have any knowledge of your husband's activities? The question hit me like a slap. No, absolutely not. I thought he was a freelance graphic designer. I thought his income came from legitimate clients. We have to ask, Agent Reed said, her tone gentler. In cases like this, sometimes spouses are involved, either knowingly or as unwitting money mules. I understand, but I had no idea. If I had known what he was doing to those women, I stopped, my voice catching. I would have turned him in myself. Detective Goldberg nodded. Based on the evidence and your cooperation, we believe you. Now, here's what's going to happen. We need you to act normally when you go home. Don't let on that you know anything. We're going to need time to set up surveillance and coordinate with federal prosecutors. How long? 48 to 72 hours. Can you do that? Can you pretend everything is normal? I thought about going home and sitting across from Nicholas at dinner, listening to him lie about his day while I knew he'd spent it destroying someone's life. I thought about sleeping next to him, watching him text his victims while lying beside me. I can do it, I said, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. Agent Reed handed me her card. If anything changes, if he becomes suspicious, or if you feel unsafe in any way, you call me immediately. And, Mrs. Rollins, what you've done here, bringing us this evidence, it's going to save other women from being victimized. You should be proud of that. As I drove home, I rehearsed my performance. I had to be the excited wife preparing for an anniversary party that was never going to happen. I had to smile and laugh and pretend to love a man I now knew was a criminal. But the hardest part wouldn't be pretending to love him. The hardest part would be sitting across from him at dinner tonight, knowing that somewhere out there, Rebecca Davis was still waiting for a message from the man she thought loved her back. The 48 hours that followed were the longest of my life. I went home and played the role perfectly. When Nicholas walked through the door that Saturday afternoon, the day that was supposed to be our anniversary party, I greeted him with a smile and asked about his client meeting. He spun an elaborate story about a demanding startup founder and last-minute design changes, and I nodded along like the trusting wife I'd been for 10 years. We ordered takeout from our favorite Thai place and watched a movie on the couch. Nicholas seemed completely normal, even affectionate, pulling me close during the romantic scenes. I wondered how many text messages he was sending to his victims during the commercial breaks, how many women were falling for his lies while he held me in his arms. Sunday morning, he made pancakes like always. We walked Murphy through the state park like always. He told me he loved me like always. And I smiled and said I loved him too, the words tasting like poison in my mouth. The arrest happened Monday morning at 6 a.m. I was supposedly asleep when the FBI agents knocked on our door, but I'd been awake for hours, watching the clock, waiting. Nicholas stumbled downstairs in his pajamas, confused and disoriented. Through the bedroom window, I watched him get handcuffed in our driveway while Agent Reed read him his rights. The charges were extensive. 37 counts of wire fraud, 12 counts of mail fraud, identity theft, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The total amount stolen was over $127,000 from 43 different women across 6 states. Detective Goldberg called me an hour later. We've seized all his devices and frozen his accounts. We found evidence of additional victims and fake identities we hadn't discovered yet. Mrs. Rollins, your evidence was crucial in building this case. The trial took 8 months. During that time, I learned things about my husband that made me question everything I thought I knew about human nature. The forensic analysis of his devices revealed that Nicholas had been running romance scams for almost 3 years total, starting small but escalating dramatically in the final year as he perfected his techniques and expanded his operation. He had victim profiles organized by psychological vulnerability, financial capacity, and emotional neediness. Some women had been manipulated for over a year before he disappeared with their money. I testified for the prosecution, as did 14 of his victims who agreed to come forward. Rebecca Davis was one of them. When I finally met her in person outside the courthouse, she thanked me for exposing the truth, even though it meant acknowledging that the love she'd felt had been completely fabricated. "You saved us from giving him even more," she said, tears in her eyes. "Some of us were planning to take out loans, to sell houses. You stopped him before he could destroy us completely." Crystal Carrington came to every day of the trial, sitting behind me in the gallery, offering silent support. She'd helped me navigate the legal system, connected me with victim advocacy resources, and held my hand through the most difficult testimony. "You're the strongest person I know," she told me after my final court appearance. The revelation of Nicholas's crimes sent shockwaves through our social circle. Jake White was devastated, feeling guilty that he'd unknowingly helped create alibis by keeping Nicholas occupied. But Jake became one of my strongest supporters, helping me understand that none of us could have known what Nicholas was capable of. "He fooled everyone," Jake said. "The man we thought we knew never really existed." Explaining the truth to family and friends was one of the hardest parts. My mother drove up from Massachusetts the day after the arrest and held me while I cried for the first time since discovering the laptop. "I'm so proud of how you handled this," she said. "You turned a nightmare into justice for so many people." Nicholas was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison and ordered to pay full restitution to his victims. The judge called his crimes a calculated assault on the basic human capacity for trust and love. The $127,000 in restitution was distributed proportionally to victims based on their losses. Rebecca got back her $3,247, Sarah Martinez received her $800, and 39 other women got at least some financial justice. More importantly, they got closure and the knowledge that they weren't alone. The money came from the seizure and sale of Nicholas's assets, including a secret savings account I'd never known about and expensive equipment he'd purchased for his business. The divorce was finalized 2 months after his sentencing. I kept the house, which was purchased entirely with my legitimate income anyway. Murphy stayed with me, of course. Today, 18 months later, I work as a victim advocate for the Connecticut Attorney General's office, helping other people who've been targeted by romance scams. I speak at conferences about recognizing the warning signs, and I've helped law enforcement identify and prosecute 12 other romance scammers since Nicholas's arrest. I'm dating someone new now, Dominic Torres, a detective with the Hartford Police Department, who I met during the investigation. He's patient with my trust issues, understanding about why I need to verify things that other people take for granted. He knows that I sleep with my phone on the nightstand and check his location sometimes, not because I don't trust him, but because trusting someone completely almost destroyed my life once. The woman who planned that anniversary party, the one who believed in fairy tale love and happy endings, she died the day I opened Nicholas's laptop. But the woman who emerged from her ashes is stronger, smarter, and more purpose-driven than I ever imagined I could be. I saved 43 women from a predator, and in the process, I saved myself. Crystal often tells me that what I did took incredible courage, but I don't see it that way. I see it as what anyone would do when they discover that the person they love has been systematically destroying other people's lives. The courage wasn't in turning him in. That was just basic human decency. The courage was in rebuilding my life afterward, in learning to trust again, in choosing to help other victims rather than hiding in shame. Sometimes I still think about that woman I used to be, the one who spent weeks planning a surprise party for a man who was living a double life. She was naive, trusting, maybe even foolish. But she was also kind, loyal, and full of love. I don't regret being her, even if that version of me had to die for this stronger version to be born. Rebecca Davis and I have become friends. We meet for coffee sometimes, 2 women who survived the same predator and came out the other side. She's dating again now, cautiously but hopefully. "You gave me my life back," she told me recently. "Not just the money, but the truth, the closure, the chance to heal properly." That's what I'm most proud of. Not just stopping Nicholas, but helping his victims reclaim their stories, their dignity, their ability to trust again. Because that's what predators like him really steal. Not just money, but the fundamental belief that people are basically good, that love is real, that trust is possible. And maybe that's the most important lesson of all, that even when someone shatters your faith in love and humanity, you can choose to rebuild it. You can choose to be part of the solution rather than just another victim of the problem. The anniversary of my divorce is coming up next month. This time, I'm planning a party, not to celebrate a marriage that never really existed, but to celebrate the woman I've become. Crystal is helping me plan it, Jake will be there, my mother is flying in from Massachusetts, and Dominic promised to make his famous barbecue. It won't be the party I planned 2 years ago. It'll be better, because this time I'm celebrating something real, my own strength, my own worth, my own capacity to turn betrayal into justice and pain into purpose. And this time, there won't be any surprises, just truth, healing, and the kind of love that's built on honesty rather than lies.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.